Good evening and welcome to the October 10th, 2023 meeting of the Milton Select Board. Before we begin, please join us as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Also, before we begin, it is important for us as a community to acknowledge that over the last 4 days, the state of Israel has been suffering from a brutal terrorist attack and terrorist violence in its land. That violence and that suffering reverberates here in Milton. Many of our residents, particularly our friends of the Jewish faith, are in pain, and they need to know that their neighbors and their community support them in their time of need. To that end, please join us as we take a moment of silence in memory of all those who have perished and all those who are suffering as a result of the violence in Israel. Thank you for that. Item 3 is public comment. I believe we have Rabbi Benjamin here for public comment.
Thank you. From deep in my soul, on behalf of the entire Beth Shalom of the Blue Hills community, I am here to say thank you. Thank you to all who have reached out to me and others in the Jewish community to share your care and concern and to hold us in your hearts during this time of heartbreak and tears. We have scheduled a communal gathering to denounce terrorism, to support Israel's right to live in peace and security, and to lift up and strengthen the voices of those who seek peace between Israelis and Palestinians. And that's going to be this Friday, October 13th, at Congregation Beth Shalom of the Blue Hills. And the communal gathering part will be at 7:45 to 8:30. And before that, we'll have our regular Friday night Sabbath service, but 7:45. And we do welcome everyone in the community to come. I will just ask that no one brings any backpacks or any other thing that is like a backpack. We'll have security. What's clear is that Hamas did not send soldiers out to battle. They sent their soldiers out to massacre and murder Jews, to burn and rape Jews, to mow down over 260 Jewish youth at a music festival, to take as hostages Jewish men and women, Jewish mothers and grandmothers, Jewish children and babies. They sent their troops out for Jewish blood, and to our shock and horror, succeeded. A season is set for everything, a time for everything under heaven. A time for being born and a time for dying. A time for slaying and a time for healing. A time for tearing down and a time for building up. A time for weeping and a time for laughing. A time for wailing as a mourner and a time for dancing. A time for embracing and a time for shunning embraces. A time for silence and a time for speaking. A time for loving and a time for hating. A time for war and a time for peace. Now is a time for triage after tragedy, a time for grief, outrage, and resolve. Now is the time for clarity. As Senator Warren said yesterday, there is no justification for terrorism ever. And that is the kind of clarity needed at this time. And also that Hamas doesn't only terrorize Israel, but also the many in Gaza and the West Bank who they hide behind, many of whom would very much like to live in peace with Israel. And finally, we are hearing from multiple sources that Hamas's terror effort online is ramping up. Sources warn of an increasing number of photographs and videos depicting hostages and torture. So there are two suggestions. One, do not share this content. It is a weapon in their war against Israel. And two, prevent your child from watching this potentially terrifying content in the first place. Be extra careful of your children's screen usage in the coming hours and days. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Without objection, I'd like to interrupt public comment and go to item 14, which is public comment response, if the members would like to.
No objection. I'll go. I don't. You go first.
Comments or questions from members?
So I just, in 2017, I was very privileged to represent the United States as a team of law enforcement executives who traveled, and I spent significant time in the state of Israel. My tutor was my friend, the rabbi. In the many days and weeks that I spent there, as you know, I was embedded with IDF, IMP. I traveled from the beautiful seacoast of Tel Aviv to the north, to the Golan Heights, to Haifa and Cana, and then crossed into the West Bank and into Palestine. I spent time in kibbutz. I had many Shabbat dinners. But the last place that we went was Gaza. And when we left there, you are very correct. All of the 2 million people who live in Gaza do not hate the state of Israel. Matter of fact, on a daily basis, many residents of Gaza travel to Israel to work, and it's how they gain their livelihood. But you are correct also that the threat of terror exists in that country every single day. The threat of Hamas, Hezbollah to the north, on the Lebanese border. This is no different than the attacks of 9/11 that this country incurred over 20 years ago, and our own marathon bombing that we experienced, but to a much higher degree in 2013. As the rabbi eloquently said, and as our president said today, there is no place in this world for terror of this type. There is no place in this world for hatred of this nature. And this, to anyone who's watching, when we go home tonight, you can put your head in your pillow and you can rest assured that you have the peace and security of being a United States citizen in this country. Be rest assured that there are people in Gaza, hostages, that are living in pure horror tonight. I have met bombing victims. I have met with captives. I have met with veteran, hardcore Israeli soldiers. Do not be mistaken, as you know, my friend, this will be a bloody campaign. This will not be difficult. This battle to eradicate these terrorists and rescue whatever hostages they can be comparable to the Marine Corps battle to take Fallujah, which was probably the bloodiest campaign since 9/11. So when you go to sleep tonight, and I say this to everyone who listens, close your eyes and say a prayer for those who have been lost and those who live in fear tonight that they may not wake up tomorrow. Because for them, this is not a CNN story. This is not a Channel 7 news story. This is the reality of terror in the world today in 2023. And thank you for coming tonight, my friend.
Other comments or questions from members? Mr. Zoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Rabbi, for coming in. I just want to say a few words, and I appreciated your time yesterday on the phone as well. So I'm sure that you're sharing with the congregation the strong support of the Select Board for them, for their families, and their friends who have been affected by this. It's hard to believe it's been a little over 2 weeks since I stood under a chuppah and celebrated my wedding. At the wedding, we had the opportunity to share a lot about the Jewish faith and Jewish traditions with our guests. As you know, my wife is Jewish, and I found it really uplifting that so many folks who had really not been aware of traditions like the chuppah were educated and in the spirit of sort of joy and family. And when we spoke yesterday, Rabbi, you said something and it really struck a chord with me, which is how so much of this strife in Israel and also strife in places like Ukraine and around the world are rooted in intolerance and rooted in a lack of empathy. And I think, for many of us who are not Jewish but have been bearing witness to this, it's tough to learn how to do that. And I take very well your points about not sharing propaganda, not viewing propaganda, and not engaging with it. For years, I've been following the Auschwitz account on Twitter, which I don't use anymore, but it was always, every day they would share a photograph of someone who was in the camp, whether it was a birthday or the day that they had passed away or another important day of their lives, photos of young, old, women, men. And it was both heart-wrenching, but also it seemed very distant, these old black and white photographs. And now we have in-color video of similar scale of at least the desire to eliminate a people. And it's difficult to figure out how to do that, how to engage with that and bear witness to it without really suffering yourself and without doing the work of people that you would prefer not to work on behalf of. I do think it's important for the citizens of Milton to make sure that they are touching base with their Jewish friends and friends that they know that are affected by this violence. I think it's important to discuss with your children in an age-appropriate fashion what is going on. I remember this happened around 9/11. How should we talk with our children about tragedy? Thinking about age-appropriate ways to making sure that they're aware of what's happening, and also that they should be aware of what's online and what they should try to avoid online. So again, thank you for coming in, and I just want to encourage again everyone in Milton who's listening tonight to make sure that they're reaching out to folks and letting them know that they support them, because that's the best thing we can be doing right now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other comments or questions? Ms. Musto.
Thank you. I appreciate the rabbi coming here and speaking on behalf of the community. As somebody who is Jewish, both of my sons have actually gone to Israel, and what a beautiful country. They should, send me back all the photos and everything. But the people are so warm and loving, and in Jerusalem, for instance, it's very interesting because Muslims, Jews, Christians, they all come together. Everybody gets along, and so I think that has to be said, that there is, this is attack on humanity, and it is an attack to wipe out an entire religious group. It is upsetting, and I have a cousin whose daughter just got married maybe 2 years ago, and is having their first grandchild and lives in Jerusalem. And she's trying to get there, but she can't get there. So it is upsetting what's going on. And I really appreciate that the community is going to have something on Friday night, because I think people have to support each other. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Musto. Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay.
Look forward to seeing some of you who can make it on Friday night.
Thank you, sir.
Be there. adjourn for a minute?
I'm okay.
Sure.
Gotta find a tissue. I didn't expect to cry, but it is quite upsetting.
We can take a moment.
I'm taking
We can take a moment. We'll adjourn just for a moment. Come back.
No, I know what they are. They're all here.
2023, the Milton Select Board. We are on item 3, which is public comment. We allow 21 minutes for public comment, 3 minutes per speaker. I see in the chat room, well, we have someone here in person. We typically go with someone in person first, so why don't we go with the person in person, and then we'll go with the person online. So if you could come up and sign in and give us your name and address.
Yes. Ashley Brown, 50 Columbine Road.
And let's see.
I was thinking you were a reporter.
I am not.
I have the timer for the 3 minutes, and Mr. Milano has the timer for the 20 minutes, and I'll let you know at about 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Ms.
Sure.
Brown. Okay.
Thank you.
You can go ahead whenever you want.
Thank you all for your time, and my thoughts are with everyone's friends, families, and all of those in Israel right now. And thank you for the rabbi for coming to speak. So I'm here on a much less important topic, but one that is in front of us today on the MBTA communities. And I've been following closely the planning board meetings. I've been in attendance and also listened to the warrant committee meeting and prior select board meetings. And first, I am in favor of having a compliant article set forth to the town at town meeting. And I appreciate all of the time and effort that's been going in both on the select board and planning board side. I very much support the amendment that you are proposing tonight. My concern with the existing article, well, I have a few of them, is that first of all, it's not internally consistent, which I think was just a mistake from materials sent over by the town. So not the one that's being proposed tonight, but the existing article attaches a map that does not actually show the boundaries of the district that the language of the zoning bylaw suggests. And so I think, everyone, I think, wants it to be consistent. And so this amendment would do so. I also think this amendment is consistent with what's been presented to the community at the MBTA communities meetings and at the planning board. I think the language of the current bylaw included a plan that actually was proposed. I believe the planning board asked the consultant to look into, and then by the time the consultant came back, they did not recommend that zoning. So I would strongly urge the select board to adopt the amendment tonight, which makes the article consistent with the recommendation from the town's consultants and also with the materials that have been presented to the community at the MBTA Communities Act and the most recent planning board meeting. I also noticed that you included specific, design parameters in this modification, which I think are really important to include in a zoning article. And so, in short, I strongly suggest you adopt it. Just one thing, I have an eye for detail, and I would just ask that the
30
maps.
seconds, Ms. Brown.
Sure. The maps still refer to the Elliott corridor as the transit area triplex. I believe that it is the same boundary line, but I would just ask that be updated to make it internally consistent so that there's no confusion. I believe it was because with all the various names, the planning board moved to Elliott Corridor to be more clear. And I think it's just that heading in the map that needs to be updated. So thank you all for your time, and I would encourage you to continue to work with the planning board to include any additional design parameters.
Thank you, Ms. Brown.
Thank you.
And on the online side, we have Mr. Clark with his hands up. So we can promote Mr. Clark.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Clark, and you have 3 minutes, and I'll let you know at about 2 minutes and 30 seconds, sir. And if you could just give well, we have your name, if you could just give your address, that would be helpful.
Sure, I'm a resident at 1169 Brook Road.
Great. All right, let's proceed.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all this evening. I appreciate the opportunity to voice my disappointment in regards to the decision made by the Select Board Landing Committee to remove what may have been the last remaining public access for fishing on the Neponset River by installing a fence at Milton Landing along the parking area. As cited in the Select Board Landing Committee meeting of June 8th, a resident of 88 Wharf complained that there was damage to the fencing at Milton Landing by the Department of Public Works. A motion was made in the June Landing Committee meeting by member Roxanne Musto to approve the spend of $9,500. This was seconded by member Ted Carroll and approved by all in attendance. It was noted in those meetings that Nick Milano had left the meeting at 9 prior to this topic. I don't understand how the $9,500 was approved by the Landing Committee for repairs, but ended up in the resulting of a fence being constructed in an area that it did not exist prior. For years, I've heard the call from various Milton town groups, MPIC, Select Board, Landing Committee, to name a few, to promote the use of Milton Landing for water-related activities. Construction of this fence is in complete opposition of this vision. There was no ample study done to understand the impacts, nor were any persons or parties who regularly use the landing consulted or involved. There is now no way to properly land a hooked fish given the height and placement, meaning the distance from the seawall that now exists. I do recognize that recently there are signs that gone up warning about contamination of fish. However, most people who fish there are there for the recreational aspect, not for the purpose to put food on the family table day after day. I've even heard in one of the recent Landing Committee meetings, Chair Wells explicitly comment that he favored the fencing as a safety feature. That's a nice gesture. However, the area adjacent and only about 100 feet away contains a park and a small child play area, and there's no safety fence in that area. So if monies were approved to improve safety, that mark was solely missed. I'll also mention that if you go into Boston on any of the waterfront areas in the Seaport or Wharf districts, there's no safety fences, and those areas are navigated safely by thousands of people every day. Lastly, the charge of the Landing Committee states to advise the Select Board on the implementation of the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, MAPC, Waterfront Recreational Access Study at Milton Landing, Final Summary 2018. To advise the Select Board on and collaborate with the Planning Board on implementation of Milton Village Mixed Use Plan Unit Development Overlay Zoning 2020. To identify and review opportunities for augmentation of and expansion of active and passive open space connections to Milton Landing and the Neponset River waterways. To identify and review opportunities to enhance water access and quality of water for water-dependent uses.
Mr. Clark, we're
I'm just closing, sir.
If you
Thank
close,
you.
please, yeah.
So that charge is more than 5 years old, and a lot has changed in those 5 years. So I would just like to offer that perhaps the subcommittee would benefit from a refreshed charge to help navigate the future of Milton Landing for the community.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, sir. All right, anyone else for citizen speak? Seeing no one else here in person. Anyone else online? I don't see any hands up. So we'll give it just a minute to see if anyone wants to do it, but I don't see anyone. Mr. Milano, do you?
Correct.
All right, so we'll move on to item 4, discussion approval Milton Chamber of Commerce Holloway Stroll event for October 28th, 2023. And this includes both the use of Manning Park for the Halloween stroll and a what did I say? Holiday?
Holloway.
Holloway?
Holloway.
All right,
That's
well,
all right.
that's not going to be the first mistake I make tonight.
Go ahead,
Use of
Mr.
Manning Park and a one-day liquor license for that event.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the Milton Chamber of Commerce's application for the use of Manning Park for the holiday stroll event on October 28th, 2023, from 3 to 5.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
I was going to add the liquor license too.
Oh,
I was doing both.
well, let's
A
do
and
that
B.
one, let's do that one
All right, I'm
separate.
going to do the
Let's
separate.
that
Okay,
one
all right, so
separate.
that's fine. Okay.
So we're not online, so we can just raise our hands. All in favor?
Yes.
Unanimous. And now, the second motion.
So I'll make a
Item B.
motion, Mr. Chair, to approve the application for a one-day liquor license by the Milton Chamber of Commerce for the whole Halloween stroll event on October 20th, 2023, from 3 to 5.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. All right, thank you for that. Item 5.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr.
I
Milano.
could, Mr. Parlavecchio, we had asked him to come just to do a little PR about it, but so folks are aware, it's a great event down in East Milton. The chamber puts it on every year. All the businesses come out, give out candy for children, for everybody that's trick-or-treating. So the bouncy house, the band, DJ, tables for businesses that are set up on the deck. They're also looking, as with the approval of the one-day liquor license, a beer truck in addition to that, and we're looking forward to holiday and a holiday stroll and tree lighting, penciling in Saturday, December 2nd, but more to come on that. But in the meantime, it's a great event for the kids. Please join us on the 27th, 28th.
All right, thank you for that, Mr.
Sorry about
Milano. And no, thank you for that. And let's try to publicize that on the website
That's just
and with email and social media, and also we can trumpet it also when we meet again on the 24th. All right. Anything further on item 4?
No.
Item 5, discussion approval, special town meeting, December 4th, 2023. We have an item for an additional warrant article. I think we have Mr. Loring here. And if you want to join us, Mr. Loring from the School Building Committee, and I think online we may have Mr. O'Rourke. So if we could promote Mr. O'Rourke.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Wells.
do you want to reopen the warrant before he speaks, or do you want to?
We can do it. We can do it either way. If you want to make the motion now, we
So
can
I'm
do
going
it.
to do it now just to
Sure.
get it, because I'm not sure. So I'll make a motion to reopen the warrant.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. So we have the warrant is now reopened. We have a proposed warrant article for a school building committee appropriation, and we have Mr. Loring here with us and Mr. O'Rourke as well. So I think we'll turn it over to, I believe, Mr. O'Rourke with Mr. Loring with Mr. O'Rourke from Parts Unknown, maybe to help out a little bit.
There he is. He's there.
He is there.
He's Sean. He's there. He's
Great.
smiling.
Just trying to share my screen real quick. There we go. All right. Great. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. Again, my name is Mark Loring. I'm a member of the school committee and the vice chair of the school building committee. Sean O'Rourke is remote today, and I'm sure we'll jump in all the situations where I screw up here. But I have a few slides to share as it relates to some of the updated work we've done as a committee. So once again, this is just to reframe those folks online who the members of the school building committee are. We have many great and talented members who have been working diligently on this project. And wanted to share an updated kind of timeline of where things stand. So I think the last time that Sean was able to come in front of the committee, there was a discussion of the OPM RFP. So you can see that's kind of what we've been doing here in the green. In September is we've been working on issuing an RFS and getting responses back from qualified OPMs to serve as an owner project manager on this project. We actually got the responses back at the end of last month, and we just had a meeting earlier today where a group of us reviewed all the submissions. We got 7 submissions and was able to make a short list. Just to jump very quickly, these were the 7 submissions that we received. And earlier today, we actually selected PMA, Vertex, and Left Field as the 3 finalists. So those 3 finalists will come back to the full school building committee for interviews, in which we hope to then select a finalist to move forward and support us with this project. So ultimately, hope to have an OPM on board in early November. And then you can see kind of how this lines up with the fall town meeting. And also important to flag here, the MSBA decision. So that's an important step here because that decision is not expected until mid-December, which is beyond the time of the fall town meeting, as you can see. And that misalignment of those 2 deadlines is really kind of one of the reasons we are here tonight, the primary reason we are here tonight. As I said, here's the people we received bids for. So to jump into this, really the MSBA decision obviously has significant implications for how we move forward as a school building committee. If the MSBA comes back to us and says that, yes, we'll be invited in, we'll need to assess that and look to see if we want to join the MSBA, which obviously comes with some potential financial benefits. However, if they say no, as they have done the past several years, we want to make sure that we are positioning the town in the best situation possible to continue to move forward on this urgent issue of space need within the schools. And so we want to make sure we are set up to have the right team on board. And that right team includes an OPM and a qualified architect. So that is why we've been moving forward on the OPM. We're moving forward on the architect. We're doing all of this with the assumption that the MSBA will say no to us, because that's what we control. The MSBA says yes, then that potentially changes, as you see here, the trajectory of what we do, and we would need to kind of take a step back. But the rest of this discussion tonight is assuming we are going to get a no from the MSBA and kind of what we think we need in order to carry things forward. So this brings us to the warrant article, which is an appropriation request. You can see here what past appropriations the SBC has received from the town. In 2019, we received $40,000 as kind of initial appropriation. And in this past May town meeting, we received an additional $275,000. So far, we've only spent $35,000 approximately on architects and some various surveys. So right now, our balance as of the end of September really was this $281,398.21. This is a very large table that is difficult to read. So just to say what this is meant to be is a snapshot of information found on the MSBA's website. It provides information on designer and OPM fees for ongoing projects under the MSBA. So we went to the MSBA's data to try and look at and say, okay, out of this $281,000, how far is that going to take us as it relates to working with an OPM, working with an architect, moving that process forward through the next step, which is really a feasibility study, initial schematic designs for a new school building. What is that going to take? And so we took the publicly available data from the MSBA regarding projects of similar size, for square footage or similar enrollment projections as we're projecting for the new school. I say we, and I of course mean Sean O'Rourke, did a lot of this work of gathering this information, and here are a few examples of kind of some of the projects that have happened recently that kind of match either from an enrollment standpoint or a square footage standpoint approximately what we're looking at with our current projections within the town. And you can see kind of what the architect fees were and the OPM fees were, and the total of both of those on average across these projects for this initial phase. I want to be clear on this. These are not total architect and OPM fees for these projects. These are just for that kind of first feasibility and initial design phase of the project. So you can see on average, the cost is about $852,000. Obviously, our allocation of $281,000 is quite a bit below that, and that was the thing that kind of raised our flag, and we wanted to look into a little bit more. So again, here's some other information from the MSBA. This is their Module 3, so MSBA has lots of modules and steps you have to go through. Module 3 is really the feasibility study portion, which is the portion we are kind of looking at right now. Whether or not we are with MSBA, we still have to do a feasibility study and assessment. So we use the MSBA's information to kind of create a proposal of what we think it's going to take, how long, and how much cost. Within this chart, there are these dates for preliminary design program and preferred schematic report. So that's kind of what we are trying to accomplish within this next phase of funding, is this preliminary design and a schematic report, which altogether is 244 days, is what the MSBA's projection is for how much time this takes. At the same time, we know we are actually a good bit beyond where most communities are when they enter this phase of the MSBA. There's still lots of work to do, as you see here in the yellow, and all that work is needed, we need to do as a committee, and is work that is done under this Module 3. In addition, though, there's some work that we've already done, which is kind of a space needs study, identifying the site of the school. The DRA has done a conceptual design for us. So there is work that has already been done. We are not starting quite from the same ground as most of these communities. So therefore, we don't believe we'll necessarily need as much funding as most of these communities. So we assumed, instead of kind of being the exact same, we assumed kind of a 75% multiplier. We assume we've done about 25% of that Module 3 work of the feasibility study and schematic report. So if we take that and multiply it by kind of what that average cost was, we take the schedule and multiply it by the average cost, we need about 6 months is how long they estimate that this will take. We take what our kind of current cost is, what the average cost is over that 6 months, which is, again, this fee right here, and this is getting us our burn rate, which is essentially how much money do these projects spend on a monthly basis in order to achieve the end result of this feasibility and schematic design. So burn rate of about $100,000 a month. Given our available funding, we believe that we have a little over 2 months duration worth of funding in order to do this work. That's in addition to the fact that we have some pending costs, this Article 97 survey and some appraisals of some of the town land that is included within the land swap. So those things together, we have about 2 months worth of funding to kind of move this project forward. So if we are looking to try and get all of this work done, we have about a $400,000 shortfall. And that's what brings us to the warrant article and the request for additional funding from the town in the upcoming special town meeting in December, is to provide the school building committee this around $400,000 in order to have enough funding to pull us, pull us to kind of the finish line of this particular phase of the project. And again, to get it here, we were trying to get through the feasibility study concept design phase. And that's what we're looking for funding for. So this is not a request for obviously anything close to full funding. It's just enough funding to get us through the next phase of the work. Sean, please jump in if there's anything I missed here.
No, Mark, you did a fabulous job. I'm just here in case any questions come up.
Great.
Mr. Chair, just one
Thank you.
question.
Yeah, comments or questions, Mr.
So
Wells?
just one quick question. I'm very familiar with who DRA is. Who's BSC?
Great question.
I'll take that one.
All right. I don't,
Yeah.
Sean?
So do you want me to take that one?
Yeah.
All right, sorry about it. So yeah, Mr. Wells, BSC was a civil engineering company that did the survey over at Gow Road and came up with the different parcels that we looked at. So that was the existing expenditures that we had a couple slides back. We've contacted them again, dealing with EEA at the state. There's
fine. I'm good. No, you
potential
don't-
that
I
we might
just
have
wanted- I
to
just-
survey additional land that was part of the land swap. So they provided us an estimate of that, of $42,000 for additional survey.
Okay.
That is not a contract we've executed at this
Great.
point.
No, I'm good. I just wanted to, that's not a, I know most acronyms in this, and that was one I had not seen, so thank you.
Sorry about that.
That's all right, no big deal.
Other comments or questions? Mrs. Musto.
Thank you. The question I have is, I have a couple questions. The first one is, how many times have we applied for funding through the School Building Authority at this point?
Yeah, I believe this is our third or fourth time that we have applied.
Third time, okay. And for Mr. Milano, can you talk a little bit about this? It looks like it's coming out of free cash. So what is our balance in free cash?
Yeah, I don't know that the article identifies, does it?
It doesn't.
It does.
Well,
Okay.
that's my
It
understanding.
does.
Sorry,
It
yes.
does, it does.
It does.
yeah,
Good.
It does.
It does.
I didn't think I'd plugged that in yet. So free cash is certified at the end of September
Yes.
at about $3.3 million.
Okay.
Should you already take this up at finance already? Are you going to vote on this, or no? You don't? You
This
just-
hasn't, I believe, gone before the
Finance
finance
is meeting
committee.
tomorrow morning. I don't think this is on the
I don't think it has, I think we could vote it tonight.
Yeah, this is an article, so this is an article, so it's really not, it's outside the operating budget, and
Right,
it's an
'cause
article, so it's not, I don't think it's something in the past that we've gone to finance for.
No, I'm fine, and I'm thinking what they're up against here. So 2 months. So this would be available immediately on the town meeting vote, or would this be subject to the AG's?
It's already been certified.
It's
so-
already done. No. You know how the AG votes, takes review of all our articles when we pass them before they're. Would
That
this
is
be?
for bylaws.
So they won't be subject to this.
No, this money would
Okay.
be appropriated and available beginning December, whatever day of the vote.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to approve the 406-536 to be included in this warrant article as the amount to meet the needs of the school building committee. Is that all right?
Yeah, I think we want to, have a motion to include the article for the warrant with that change, and then request town council to review.
I'll take that as a friendly amendment.
Okay. So a motion to include the...
I'll second.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
You sure that's the number? Are you sure that's the number, Sean? And
Yeah, as Mark alluded to, that's the initial number to get us through this next phase. Obviously there'll be, additional funding for the overall project as we get through that. But that's the goal of this. It's, to refine, get better numbers, and basically have a better understanding of everything that, we're going to be asking for in the future.
Mr. Chair, if I'd like to just recognize that, the school building committee has received, 2 tranches of funding, and they still have, over almost $300,000 left. So I think they'd be commended for their fiscal responsibility up to this point and their continued hard work. And so I'll be voting in favor of this. And thank you, Mark, for coming in person. And Sean, for always being present wherever you happen to be on the planet.
Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. All right, thank you for that. Thank you all. And now,
I'll make a motion to close the
Yep.
warrant.
I'll second.
motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. All right. We also have in item 5C, we've received proposed updates to the article for the MBTA Communities Act, and I don't know if this is Mr. Milano and is Mr. Zawinski.
Yes, he is.
He's with us. All right, so we'll promote Mr. Zawinski, and
Do we have a timeline on this?
be nice.
Just
Be nice.
bringing it up. Love them.
All right, so is it, Ms. Milano, is it going to be you or Mr. Zawinski to lead us through this?
I'll just as a quick explanation on the background, as you know, as we've gone through different iterations of this warrant article, our goal has been to bring back any feedback that we hear, particularly feedback that comes up at planning board meetings and the work that's done by their consultants. UTIL has been working on many iterations. We are now on iteration, I think 1N is the designation here. So I'll let Tim take it from there as to what the language changes would do and what the map would look like. Tim, if you want to just jump right in.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you, members of the Select Board, for having me tonight. I couldn't change my name here. I was just in a meeting of the Sign Review Committee hosting, so I'm Zoom one right now. But I'm Tim Zerwinski, Director of Planning and Community Development. As Nick said, we've been in a process since the beginning of September of trying to update this article so that it reflects the latest thinking and the latest input from the planning board to our technical review consultants. So just to kind of refresh everyone, at the beginning of September, I had adapted the state's model bylaw to include dimensional parameters and descriptions of the subdistricts that we had been looking at the time, which at that time represented, again, sort of the latest and greatest of what we were talking about at the planning board. The planning board every 2 weeks meets. This is a standing item on their agenda. They've been giving consistent feedback to our technical review, or our technical assistance consultants, who have been, helping us run the compliance model, helping us adapt, to additional dimensional parameters to kind of fit some of the constraints and some of the, the issues the planning board has seen come up. There had been a previous kind of update to that article. I think it was approved on September 26th. Again, represented the latest thinking at the time. As one of the residents at Citizen Speak had mentioned, there may have been some internal inconsistencies with that we've attempted to clean up. The article that I gave to Nick to include in your packet for tonight's meeting, again, I'll repeat the phrase, represents the latest and greatest thinking that's coming out of that interaction between the planning board and our technical assistance consultants. I think that this iteration is probably, if not final, as close to final as it's going to get. Over the course of the last 6 weeks, our consultants have come up with, we're actually on option Q, but the sort of the iteration that is represented in this language and on the map that I provided is what we're calling option 1N. So that should kind of indicate that we've gone through A, B, C, D, E, F, G, et cetera, to get to N. A lot of those different options have been technically compliant, meaning that it hits 15 units per acre, it hits our unit capacity number of 2,461, hits all of the other various compliance measures. But for all sorts of reasons, a lot of those options were just not satisfactory, to the planning board, to residents that we heard from. Given all of the feedback that the planning board has given to UTIL, which is the planning firm that we're using as a technical assistance consultant, given all of the constraints in the statute and in the state guidelines, given all of the constraints that we've put on ourselves as a town so that this zoning kind of represents our priorities for planning and zoning, I really do believe that this map and this set of dimensional parameters and this zoning language is as close to final as we're going to get at this point. A couple things that I wanted to kind of stress at the outset, and I can talk just a little bit about what's in this language. But the planning board has asked me to make clear that, and this is a dynamic that can be sometimes a little confusing to kind of understand. This is not endorsed by the planning board. Planning board has explicitly said that they're not fans of this language. That nothing that's in there has their thumbs up. They haven't taken a vote on any language. They haven't taken a vote on any sub-districts. So kind of, I know in the past there's been some hesitance and some discussion here at the select board about, acting, independent of the input of the planning board. And I guess what I'll say is that, there hasn't been a ton of engagement on this language that you have. What I've been kind of put in a position to do is, take part in these discussions, review these discussions, review, what comes out of our technical assistance providers in terms of their incorporating planning board feedback into dimensional parameters and district boundaries and kind of translate that into the zoning language that you see. So what you have in front of you, by and large, represents my best estimation of what has come out of those planning board hearings. It does not represent anything that's been endorsed by the planning board. So I think the language is good. I think the language represents all of the feedback and all of the constraints that the planning board and all the priorities that the planning board has kind of given to our technical assistance providers. So again, while it doesn't have their formal thumbs up, I think that it does reflect a lot of what their stated priorities have been. So all of that being said, just to kind of situate everyone, it should be familiar. It's not entirely different from the last two iterations, but a couple of the moves that we've been making is, and I think the biggest transition between the two versions that you've seen is we've gone in the transit area, and I can bring up the map really quick, just so everyone can see it. In the transit area, which we're now calling the Elliott Street corridor, for I think good reasons. Transit area type triplex was kind of a technical kind of stand-in term, but we're calling that the Elliott Street corridor. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. In the last version that you went, and I believe it was Ms. Brown earlier who kind of talked about the inconsistency between the language and the map that had been shown. So that's gone at this point. But the previous iteration of this language had a larger transit area that kind of dipped into some of the B zone parcels in the Columbines and along Central Ave. And we had done what we called a tiered treatment, which basically meant on a 7,500 square foot lot, you could do a 3-unit building. And then on a 10,000 or greater square foot lot, you could do two families. So there was kind of a step up in kind of density for a larger parcel. For several reasons, further analysis kind of showed that that was causing numbers in some of the other sub-districts to be not where the planning board wanted them to be. The larger area and the only kind of relatively small increase in density for that larger area threw off our overall density to below 15 units per acre. And so this language and this map now reverts back to the smaller transit area, which is this sort of greenish area in the middle, and reverts back to the simple 7,500 square foot minimum lot size, 3 units on a lot. The other thing that may not have been in the previous iteration is this pink area along Blue Hills Parkway. That's what we're calling the Blue Hills Parkway corridor. This is just something that picks up some of the parcels along Blue Hills Parkway that kind of have a similar character to the Elliott Street corridor. This is something that's just helping our overall density, helping our overall numbers, and kind of helps some of the other numbers in some of the other sub-districts kind of modulate a little bit. And then the other thing that you can maybe see that's visible on this map is in the Milton Village and Central Ave, or the Milton Station, Central Ave Station area. You've got this sort of green part and this kind of hatched part. This represents what's going to be our mandatory mixed-use district. You're probably familiar. I may have briefed. I may have briefed you previously, about this change in the guidelines about the ability of towns to now include a mandatory mixed use. The original guidelines prevented you from requiring mixed use. You could allow mixed use, but you couldn't require it. The new guidelines allow you to sort of carve out a certain portion of your district, and under certain parameters, you can require mixed use. And this is a means of helping to preserve some of the commercial real estate that we've got in our business districts. Our business districts are small, but we depend on them for for a lot of things. And so in this hatched area that includes 88 Wharf, 2 Elliott Street, the Web Mill building, and then going off and kind of capturing pretty much the entirety of the Central Ave business district, that's going to be our mandatory mixed use area. We're only allowed to include up to 25% of our units in a mandatory mixed use district, and then there are other restrictions. This is going to be a separate article that creates this district. So the main language that you have, has all of the dimensional parameters that we've been talking about. It allows mixed use but doesn't require it. The way that we're kind of situating this is, assuming the main article passes at town meeting, there would be an immediate follow-on article that amends that article to basically say, this portion of the Milton Station, Central Ave Station Business District, as shown in the hatched area on this map, has the mandatory mixed use. So mixed use will be a required use. There are parking requirements. There are kind of floor space requirements, but a relatively simple, a simple kind of amendment to that language. So, that's one of the main kind of differences here. And you can kind of see, it's a little bit tough to see because of the hatching, but there's a distinction between sort of the east and west portions of that district. The western portion has a little bit of a lower height limit. I think it's 4.5 stories. The western portion in yellow has a little bit of a higher height, kind of to match the 88 Wharf, height, in that area. So, the other thing that you'll see in this language, and I do have to, make a little bit of a correction to my statement earlier, as I've been thinking, about there's been input from the planning board. I don't want you to think that there hasn't been input. You may have gotten an email from Cheryl Tagayas. She had a lot of input on especially some of the site plan procedures, some of the dimensional standards. So, I just want to kind of make clear that it's, I'm not trying to say that there's been no input. It's just that in terms of the formal kind of process of kind of moving language between the two boards is kind of where, we haven't had that kind of formal vote or that formal approval. But there's a lot more in this version on site plan review procedures in terms of submission requirements, in terms of different development standards for sort of the shape of these buildings, the look and feel of these buildings. The sample bylaw that the state created, has some suggestions, but, kind of bare bones. And so that's something where, there was a decent amount of input from the planning board and a good discussion at their last meeting about, what we want to do in terms of site plan review. Site plan review, for those of you that are unfamiliar, is a kind of permitting procedure that planning boards can avail themselves of that allows you to have a little bit more discretionary input on conditioning larger projects, beyond just the simple height, setback, lot coverage that you see in zoning. And so, that's something that we want to make sure that the planning board is able to avail themselves under this zoning, so that, there's a little bit more, input, from the planning board when we see these applications. So you have the updated language, you have the updated map, you have a number of proposed articles, one of which is, obviously for the main language. One of them is for the mandatory mixed use amendment. And one of them is for the amendment to the zoning map, which will be required to kind of show these overlay districts on our zoning map. So the planning board has scheduled a public hearing for October 26th. There's a statutory obligation to hold a public hearing when they receive a zoning article from, in this case, the select board. So they've scheduled that for the 26th. That's being advertised in the Milton Times this week and next week. So whatever version of the language that the select board has approved and is kind of current on Thursday morning when that notice runs is going to be the language that is considered for the public hearing. So the hope is it'll be the version that you've got in front of you right now. Again, it represents a further working up of some of the concepts and some of the ideas that the planning board's been talking about for, again, at least the past 6 weeks, if not, the past 6 months. So happy to field any questions about the map or about the language. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. So we have in front of us right now first the multifamily zoning as of right article. And Tim, is it fair to say that the map is part of that article?
The map, they're kind of all kind of tied together. There is a separate article to amend the map, but the language refers to the map, and so there's a kind of a narrative description of these districts, but the actual shape of them is in the map, and the language itself kind of refers back to that map.
So right now we have articles on the warrant for multifamily zoning as of right, and for the mixed use in the Milton Central Station subdistrict. We don't have a separate article at this point for the map, and so that would require us to if we need a separate article for the map, we'd have to reopen the warrant and put an article on if the map is required. So let's table that for a minute. We're on item 5C, which is the updates to the existing multifamily zoning as of right warrant article. Comments or questions from members? Mr. Zoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Zawinski, thank you very much. I appreciate your ability to sort of provide the sort of carefully worded input from the planning board, and I understand it's a bit of a tightrope, but I'm glad that that we're getting language that has been generated from their discussions and their input, and I'm glad that Ms. Tagayas is offering substantive comments as well around the specifics. So I don't have too much to ask, but we did have a couple of citizens have asked me about the Kidder Building's inclusion in the Blue Hill, I think, is it the Blue Hills? Parkway corridor. Thank you, Mr. Wells. About whether or not that might, because as I know you remember, we've just sort of sold that parcel to a school for the continued operation of the Discovery Schoolhouse there, and I'm just wondering if you've heard input from folks about that and what your thoughts are.
I did get that bit of input this week. There was a question about whether it could be removed, kind of with, understanding it's recently sold for a particular purpose, and would rezoning kind of spur a redevelopment on that site that maybe we would lose the use that everyone was interested, in continuing on that site. It's up to you all. The one thing that I would say that you kind of need to be kind of clear about is what is the planning basis for excluding one individual parcel versus other parcels. We talk about spot zoning sometimes, especially when a PUD zoning comes up, where you're kind of treating an individual parcel differently than you're treating other parcels in the zoning district. And so I think you would want to have a really solid rationale for, this otherwise suitable redevelopment parcel that's kind of in a contiguous district, shouldn't be in that zone. When we've been adapting these maps, one thing that we've been trying to be careful of is, I'll give you a great example. The shape of the the LH Street corridor subdistrict has been kind of informed by, not wanting to include too many undersized parcels that would not contribute to unit capacity, but would contribute to land area. If you simply just kind of pick the ones that were too small, you would have this kind of weirdly shaped, pockmarked kind of district. So what you have to do is basically draw the most complete contiguous line you can, and maybe you get some undersized parcels in there, but most of them are kind of out. That's kind of the idea of, when you're drawing these districts, what is the rationale for not having a contiguous district, because that's something that's important to the state. So I think it's definitely a conversation, but again, you'd have to think very carefully about why one parcel gets treated differently than another parcel.
So this may be the reason. If memory serves, the town has a right of first refusal. We'll have
Yes.
to check this with
We
town
do.
council, but I believe
We do.
we have a right of first refusal with respect to that land. So the town would have something to say if anyone wanted to buy it and redevelop it.
Okay.
Plus, if we crack that door once, I mean, you've got two churches across the street, and
Yeah.
you're just gonna, first, I mean, I appreciate it, and you and I have been involved in this since the beginning, like, to when, and many developers had the chance to buy this before we even got to where we're at.
Right.
I think if we crack that door once, you're just cracking it 100 times before all set. It's
I
such a
totally
dynamic neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's so many possibilities, I would be very careful.
Yeah, and it
Quick-
seems to me if we have that, the town has control in that respect. It has a contractual right to
Mr.
control.
Chair, can you do
Yes,
me one
Mr.
favor
Mr.
before
Mr.
he
Wells.
leaves? Tim, 1026, what's the location
Oh, the public hearing.
for the public hearing? You gave the date, and there was a public hearing, you just didn't give a
And the time.
location or a time.
Oh, it'll be, I think it's either 7:05 or 7:10 in the Blute Room, and then also remotely via Zoom.
The Blue Room at Town Hall, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Other comments or questions on the proposed updates to the multifamily zoning article? Ms. Musto.
Thank you. So Tim, it sounds like the planning board did not vote on some of these design guideline changes, but it was brought up at the meeting by a member, is that correct?
That's correct.
So the question would be, if there are other people in the community that have things that they want to put into that, we haven't heard from them. I mean, we have a lot of people in the community that are architects and so forth. I'm just wondering, you know, I think you guys have a meeting coming up, don't you, soon?
Yeah, Thursday.
So it might make sense for that to be discussed over there about these guidelines. The other question I have, because I just would be wondering if this would be a precedent if we're taking an individual member's suggestions, that's all, in fairness. In fairness. The other thing I would say is, we hear a lot in this town about affordability and that we don't have enough affordable housing. So I would like to make a suggestion that we put in this an affordability of 20%. Boston has come up with a similar thing for 20%, and I think the developers certainly should be doing this, and Milton could be taking the lead on an issue that many members of our community have spoken about. So I would like to suggest that we put that in these articles.
So, and thank you. Those are two good points. I'll start with the second one and move to the first one. So the state's guidelines allow any town to include a 10% affordability requirement, which we have done. So that's in that language. So no questions asked. You can do 10% inclusionary zoning. In order to increase that to up to 20%, although a lot of towns are doing less than that, what the state has required is a independent financial feasibility analysis, and they've got a scope of work for that sort of thing, and they've got standards that they want people to follow. And so that's something that, you know, basically you get an independent consultant that, you know, runs kind of a typical pro forma of one of these projects and basically sees, you know, what percentage of affordable housing actually kind of, you know, is financially feasible in your community. And the reasoning behind that is they don't want to see communities, you know, weaponizing affordable housing by setting a artificially high percentage that would just make projects infeasible. You know, so you kind of look like you're doing the right thing, but, you know, 33% of 0 units is 0 units. So you want to make sure you hit that number kind of correctly. And so there is a procedure for that. It's again something that, you know, we've been trying to, you know, just get the zoning done. You know, so we haven't really had much opportunity to talk about that financial feasibility analysis, but that is something that the planning board has expressed an interest in doing. And we can certainly kind of start to scope that out and procure that for a future update to the zoning to kind of increase that percentage if that's something that the town is interested in. So, we're looking into a scope of work for that and trying to procure that. It won't be done for December, but it's, if the zoning passes, that's a future update that we can make. And then to your first question about kind of setting a precedent for kind of including one planning board member's suggestions versus, we're in entirely unprecedented waters here. This is an article, and I'll be very, very, very frank with you. This is an article that's written by me. The planning board has kind of discussed it. I have tried to incorporate the outcomes of those discussions. I have tried to incorporate what our technical assistance consultants have done with the input that they have gotten from the planning board. But, again, there has not been, a formal vote on any of this language. There's been no formal approval from the planning board on this. So, you've gotten, specific edits and proposals from one member. Those were discussed at the planning board meeting on Thursday. This language incorporates a significant portion of those. But in terms of the specifics, this is kind of me trying to, be a prism for what the planning board is discussing into this language. So it's been a very tough situation for me. I don't want to be the face of this. I want to help as much as I can, but this has just been something where the planning board has been going down their own path. They may still be discussing independent language that they may come up with on their own. But the select board asked me to produce language and has asked me to update it, and I've been doing the best I can given the circumstances.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask a quick follow-up on
Mr. Zoll.
Ms. Musto? Thanks, Mr. Zawinski. Just a quick follow-up on Ms. Musto's question about affordability, and I'm glad to hear. I think continuing to study and figure out if there are abilities to raise that percentage, I think would be great. But if you could just maybe for the citizens watching, so if we have a 10% affordability requirement, I'm assuming that means if you're putting up a like a 3-unit building, then you don't have any requirements for affordability. That would really only kick in once you're talking about a 10-unit building or something bigger than that.
Yeah, that's correct. So 1 unit in a 3-unit building is obviously 33%. That's beyond 10%. So you would really be looking at that sort of thing, in some of your, larger, 10 or more unit, projects. From a practical standpoint, it's probably for the best. The folks that are going to be building and operating a 3-unit building, if that's something that the zoning allows and that they build, are probably going to be owner-operators, owner-occupants that, probably shouldn't be asked to shoulder the burden of monitoring a complex affordable housing program. I don't know, and I suspect that it doesn't, in some cases, if you create an inclusionary zoning program, sometimes, there's a kind of an in lieu payment for like a fractional unit that some towns have done. I don't know if that's something that's allowed under the state guidelines under this. We can certainly look into that. But that's another thing where, is that a burden you want to put on, what is otherwise a relatively small developer, not even a developer, just a homeowner that wants to add a unit or two to their building. It kind of increases costs and kind of, the thing about, in lieu payments for fractional units is it's something that works in, the Bostons and the Cambridges and the Somervilles of the world because there's a lot of multifamily going on. There's a lot of affordable projects. In town of Milton, if the zoning passes, we'll see more multifamily development, but nothing at the scale of some of these other towns that have more robust and kind of, complex inclusionary zoning programs. So,
Thanks.
it's definitely something to look into. But I think, given where our zoning districts are and how we've drawn them up, I think there's still plenty of opportunity to get affordable units in some of those larger projects.
Thanks, Mr. Appreciate
Mr.
it.
Chair, thank you. I'm going to make a motion. Oh, sorry. Did you want to
Ms.
say
Musto.
I have another
She was in the middle of
couple of things.
yeah, go
One
ahead,
was,
go ahead.
I went to a really interesting talk really recently talking about the EV bikes and cars. And some of the towns, including Braintree, I think, has some kind of a bylaw or something that they will not allow those electronic bikes and so forth to be chained up in buildings and stairwells because of the fire risk. Right. So I'm wondering, how are we handling any of these things with, EV cars and, electronic bikes and things like that? I think that is a concern. I was on a call, there was probably 250 people, mostly fire personnel actually on it. And it was pretty interesting, so.
Yeah, no, I think it's another great point, and I think it's one kind of one way in which, I don't want to use the term common sense, but things that are like good ideas and really good intention ideas are kind of running up against the state guidelines. And one of the aspects of the guidelines is, your MBTA community zoning can impose special restrictions that are not imposed on your other zoning districts. And so, what the kind of the bread and butter example they use is, if you can't require your MBTA communities district to be, LEED certified, which is an environmental green building standard, if you're not requiring that of your single family districts, for instance. And so the one thing that we need to be careful about is, are we loading up the MBTA community zoning with things that we want, things that are good ideas, but that are kind of singling out MBTA communities because that just happens to be the zoning that we're doing. I think that, safety around electronic vehicle charging is going to be an issue, whether it's in a big building or a small building or a single family house or a multifamily building. And so that may be something where, we may want to look on a town-wide basis around creating some regulations and some zoning around, safely incorporating this stuff into our buildings. I will just say I ride my electric bike to work every day. I think a lot of the worst incidents that you see are around, frankly, black market, uninspected kind of products. So I think there's also a broader conversation about, how do we regulate, some of these materials and some of these components that are coming in so that they're, underwriter laboratory approved and all of this. But I think in the meantime, on a town-wide basis, thinking about how do we want to incorporate these sorts of things into the broader built environment, not just through MBTA community zoning, but through all of our zoning regulations.
As a follow-up, thank you for that, Tim. I was just thinking more in terms actually especially the things that are going to be chained up inside a building. But there are concerns with both. And then the other thing I guess I would say is there was a hearing on the 26th, and still there are a lot of people in the community that I still run into that have no idea about this, even though we've had all these things, we've had surveys, everything. So, obviously that's an opportunity for them to come, but I'd like to hear what they have to say. I'm not prepared to vote on these. I'm just, it's taking and incorporating some things that were not voted on at the planning board level, and they've been studying it and spending way longer than we've been studying this. So, for me, I'm not prepared to do that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Musto. Other comments or questions? I will offer that the current article that we have, which will be the article for the hearing, doesn't include currently these kind of site plan and dimensional standards and the design requirements that will give the planning board more power and more opportunity to manage the implementation of this. So I think there is a benefit to these requirements. They may change as a result of the public hearing, but I think it's personally, as a member here, I think it's a good idea to include these as part of our existing article rather than not to include them. So anyway, Mr. Wells, did you want to make a motion?
So yeah, and I just before I'll make the motion for the purpose of discussion, then I just have one comment. So I'll make a motion to. Tim, you got me lost.
It would just be to, it would be to update the warrant article with respect to multifamily zoning.
Article C, item C on our agenda. Yep. Yes. So I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded.
And just one comment, if I may, both to your point and to Tim's point, and Roxanne, I've said this repeatedly. This is not a lane that I have expertise in, and I fully agree that there may be more changes, and who even knows what may happen when we get to town meetings. So just to keep the dialogue going and to keep this moving along, that was why I was prepared to make the motion tonight. That's it.
Right. Motion's been, Ms. Musto.
Just wondering, on on our agenda, I don't believe it says a vote, does it?
Yeah, up at the top, it says approval on all three.
May make a motion.
May make a motion, but under here,
Item 5 is covering all of the different letters within it.
It is?
It's labeled discussion update.
Yeah, discussion update
Okay.
approval, that's why
Yep.
I
Okay.
actually had asked that question to you
Okay.
when we first sat down, if we were approving this tonight.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. Anything further? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And abstentions? 301. All right, item 5C, which is the mixed use.
D?
I'm sorry,
D.
5D. 5D, thank you. That's just another mistake that we make.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair. Do we need another presentation from Mr.
I
Zawinski?
think he alluded to the changes. I think these are changes to the Central Ave, Central Station rather, sub-district for mixed use.
I agree. So I'm going to make a motion to approve item D, the warrant article zoning bylaw amendment for requiring mixed use in the Milton Central Station sub-district.
And
I'll
just
second.
as a friendly amendment, it's the
Whatever, I'll
update
take-
to the
Okay,
article.
update to it, okay.
And I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, oh, sorry.
Opposed? And abstentions? 301. Okay. Item 6. Thank you, Tim, and thank you, Nick.
Thanks, Tim.
Item 6 is discussion update approval of MassDOT's response to Town Council's letter regarding the proposed intersection project at Randolph Ave and Chickatobit Road. Mr. Milano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just waiting for Town Council Peter Mello to join us. I believe he's joining momentarily, but I'll give...
Should we defer on this one and go to the next?
Sure, if we want to bounce off and come right back.
Yeah, sure. Let's defer on item 6 and go to item 7, which is discussion approval letter of support for the Conservation Commission CPA project for the Neponset Estuary.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the letter of support from this board for the Conservation Commission's CPA project application for the Neponset Estuary.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. All right.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Mello has joined us.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Milano. Let's go back to item 6, which is the MassDOT's response to Town Council's letter on the intersection at Randolph Ave and Chickatobit Road. And we have Mr. Mello, Town Council. Is that right?
He's there.
I'm here.
All right.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir. You can proceed, or I don't know if Mr. Milano is going to tee this up for us, or you're going to tee this up for us.
I'll just turn it over to you, Peter. Just that we have heard back from MassDOT, looking for some guidance from the board on how we want to proceed. Peter, if you could just kind of talk through what kind of feedback we have received.
Sure. So I received a telephone call from a lawyer from MassDOT on the date that we had identified, or around the date we had identified in the letter as the deadline for a response, and very cordial conversation. He was basically invited us to select a format for the meeting. Excuse me, indicated that they would anticipate that Carrie LaValle, the deputy administrator, would attend along with members of her staff. Expressed a willingness to meet in Milton, at their headquarters, at the site, however we wanted to do it, basically. So and they followed up today. I got an email from a scheduling assistant to Ms. LaValle, just asking, indicating that they'd like to meet soon. I think the exact phrase she used was sooner than later, and again, inviting us to identify the location. So I responded, I haven't heard back, but responded thereafter asking if they'd be willing to attend a select board meeting. I also inquired about that with the attorney last week in a voicemail message. Haven't gotten a response on that, but I think the decision for this board this evening is to determine how we want to propose the meeting proceed, basically where we want to meet, and whether we want to ask, excuse me, that they attend a select board meeting, or if they were not amenable to a meeting, and discussing this in an open meeting. Not to say they wouldn't be, but if they weren't, whatever alternative location or context we would prefer, we should discuss that as well.
And a site visit is an alternative as well that we propose?
That's an alternative, yeah. And I asked the attorney whether they'd be open to some combination thereof, and I think that that's also available to us. For example, if we wanted to meet at Town Hall and then either visit the site beforehand or after, I think that that would be an option as well.
Comments or questions from members?
It's similar.
Ms. Musto.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think a combination would be good, site, going to the site, and a meeting. And I guess whether or not they would want it to be amongst us, or they want to have it for the public, that you'll have to, I guess, figure out. But I do think that it would be helpful to do both, because we did ask for an on-site meeting already, like 2 or 3 times. So I think I would do that, but I wouldn't want to just do that and not have a meeting to discuss things.
I agree with that, and I'll just say, if we have a meeting with all of us, it will be by definition a public meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So if they agree to meet with us, it has to be a public meeting. So both the on-site would be public meeting if it's all of us, which I anticipate we'd want, and a meeting either before that or after that back at Town Hall, that would also be public as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mr. Wells?
Do you remember what we did last? Was it a public meeting we took the secretary there?
I believe it was posted as a public meeting because all of us were, there were 3
We
of
were
us
all there,
there,
yeah.
There were 3 of us there, there was a majority of the board member there, so I believe it was posted
I'm
as a
fine.
public meeting.
I'm fine. It'd be tough to have a I mean, I know it's public, but it's a tough place to.
Yeah.
It's a tough intersection. Either or, I'll be
Right.
whatever the other chair, like you and Nick, whatever you decide to do.
Well,
I'm
oh,
fine
no,
with.
I mean, it's at the pleasure of the members. I really see the benefit of Ms. Musto's idea that we meet on site and then we come back to Town Hall for a public meeting. Now, it'll be during the day, it won't be at night, but I think that may be more beneficial than having a meeting on site and then a month later having a meeting here. I think, having that primacy would be a benefit, so. Is that the consensus?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll try to set up an on-site meeting for the board, along with a follow-up meeting at Town Hall. If they'll do it.
Fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Just thinking if we get them here, then we need to go anywhere else where they're at, like we did.
Well,
That's off the top of my head.
well,
We'll definitely ride all of Randolph Ave there and back, that's for sure.
Well, it's down to 1 lane if they go today, so.
yeah.
Are we thinking that we would have it here afterwards, or are
No.
are we
You know,
thinking Town Hall?
during the day,
Oh,
it would be
probably
tough
Town
to do
Hall,
it
yeah.
here, so Town Hall.
Yeah.
We did it in the past when we had a site visit at, with one of the 40B developers. We came back to the Croner Room and had a meeting
Okay.
there after.
Sure.
So that's kind of the model that I'm thinking about. So, all right, so we'll try to set that up. It'll be during the day sometime. We'll try to work out something. Does that sound like clear direction, Mr. Mello?
Absolutely, yep.
All right.
And so I guess I was envisioning that if it were with a full board, that it would be scheduled so that we could do it on the board's typical meeting schedule. But I gather from your comments that you would be available outside of that meeting schedule. So if we could identify a date between now and the next board meeting that worked for DOT, this board could also be available, even if it's not on a Tuesday.
Yeah, I think the idea is to meet during the day when we can,
Yeah.
on site, when we can see everything.
Okay.
We definitely don't want to go there after dark.
We don't want to go there after
Definitely, this is not a good idea to go there
Yeah,
after dark.
that's right. So we want to do it during the day. That's right.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's very helpful. I'll reach out to them ASAP.
And if they could give us a series of dates, and then we'll work out what
Yeah.
works best with people's schedules.
Perfect.
All right? All right. Thank you, Mr. Mello.
Thanks so much.
All right. Item 8 is letter to the City of Boston in support of the Blue Hill Avenue Transportation Action Plan. This is a follow-up item from the last meeting, and I think this was Mr. Zawinski previously. I don't know if he's going to follow up on that. Is he?
I had him drop off. I can obviously ask him to return, but he did introduce
He did
and
introduce this.
describe where it came from. Happy to take any questions, facilitate from there if
Okay.
necessary.
Comments or questions from the members, and we'll see if we need Mr. Zawinski.
I'm ready to vote.
Ms. Musto.
Couple of things.
Yeah.
So I did, after the last meeting, I did go and look at it a little bit more closely. I guess it's fine with me if you guys to send a letter, but I really do have a few concerns that I did want to bring forward, though. The first question I have is really for Tim, and I wish he was here. I'm just wondering that this bus route idea of putting the buses down the middle of the road, is that something that he is envisioning coming to the Milton roads at all? Do we have any idea on that?
I don't think we have a.
See if we can.
Yeah, I can
Call
text
him
him,
up.
but I will.
I don't think there's
He
bus
made a
route
comment to
down
that
the
effect
road.
last week, but this
The
is.
bus on Blue Hill Ave in 28, I think. It goes up. to
28
Stoughton.
there is. I don't think there's a bus on 138, but
I believe there might be.
Well, let's see if we can.
But it's also
get
an
an answer.
initiative being
Yes.
directed and led by the city of Boston. This is not an MBTA effort. This is Boston Transportation Department has kicked off this. They did it on Columbus between Washington and Jackson Square, I think.
Yeah.
So they've been rolling it out in different parts of the city at Boston's direction rather than the MBTA, the state's leadership on that.
Okay.
We're certainly not committed
Right.
to do anything in Milton
No.
than what they're doing in Boston. We're just supporting what they're doing in Boston, I think.
So, I did look at a lot of the information out there. I think there are a lot of real positive things with it. For instance, the trees and the crossings at Edgewater, the bridges at Edgewater and Osceola. I actually have gone on some of those DCR Zoom meetings. I think you might have been on there, Mr. Milano, as well. So I think those are great things. The bus lanes are sort of controversial. I've talked with some Boston residents and seen some write-ups and things, and the comments that they have are things like for car traffic and difficulty with some of the trucks being able to deliver to some of the local businesses. They have some concerns about that, or people trying to get out of their drives and things like that. So those were some of the comments. I just feel like I should say those. And just wondering, like I said, I've gone into those 2 DCR meetings, but I don't know that, we're sending a letter on behalf of our residents in the town, and I'm just wondering, are our residents in the town, have they asked us to do this? Are they aware of this project? I think certainly, like, if you guys want to vote it, that's fine, but I do have to point that out, that I'm not sure if people have sort of weighed in on this from our town. But it is, I would say, overall, it's a pretty good project. It's just that I know that those bus lanes in the middle have been very controversial, and I believe on our letter, the first sentence says something about supporting those bus lanes or something.
It says...
or something like that.
Yes, particularly the design concepts
Yeah.
that includes center running bus lanes, protected bike lanes,
Yeah.
pedestrian safety improvements, and street trees to improve urban heat island effect.
Yeah. I do know, like I said, that it hasn't been smooth for all the people in Boston about that. So I just wanted to mention that, that's all.
Mr. Wells?
Did the city approach Tim? Is that just, I'm very familiar with it, like I know why they're doing it. Did the city ask
That's
us?
my memory,
Yeah.
and that when Mr. Milano presented on this last time, that's what happened, that they approached their planning, and Mr. Zawinski's here, so he can answer the question.
Tim, did the city ask you?
He's actually
Oh,
not promoted
sorry.
yet, just give him a
okay,
second.
sorry, my bad.
There we go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi.
Yep.
Yes, Tim, go ahead. Did you hear that question from Mr. Wells?
I did, and yes, the transportation planners from City of Boston, did ask me if we could get a letter of support from the town for this project.
And Ms. Musto had a question as well that we were going to ask Tim.
There's anything in Milton.
Well,
Milton.
Right, is that going to be some kind of initiative that you would pursue in Milton?
With this, yeah. So you heard the question.
I mean, the very simple answer is no. Just by virtue of the fact that the conditions in Mattapan Square, as soon as you step foot across the bridge, are very different in the town of Milton. Blue Hill Ave, Blue Hills Parkway right over there is now the confluence of 3 different state roads. So it would really need to be the Commonwealth that kind of would take the initiative on any kind of proposed realignment of anything on the Milton side. I think that area is definitely ripe for improvement when it comes to traffic pattern and pedestrian and bicyclist safety. But it's the type of thing that's kind of really far beyond our capacity as a department to initiate. But I think we would obviously be open to any conversation that the state wanted to have about potential improvements over there.
I'll make a motion to approve the letter to the city of Boston from the town.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
I just being very familiar with that street and exactly what Tim talks about, I can see why the BTD and the city planning are looking to do this there. It's just a mess, so I'm okay with that. It's a totally different animal than Blue Hill Ave or Blue Hills Parkway in Milton. And so,
All in favor?
aye.
Aye. Opposed? And abstentions? Oh, you did? Okay,
She
all right.
voted
Yeah, it's 4-0. Okay.
I just wanted to
Thank
point
you.
out those
No,
things.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Very helpful. All right, item 9, I don't think we have anything on for the moment. I think we'll have to defer.
Yeah, we received a request for some information and relates to a grant agreement with the Copeland Foundation. We do have a kickoff meeting with the general contractor scheduled for October 18th.
Okay.
But that's all I have for right now.
Okay, all right. Item 10, request for proposals for Milton Landing Lot B. Is this Mr. Milano, Mr. Wells?
I can
You go first.
describe
Go
it.
ahead.
We have, the Select Board Landing Committee has recommended that the Select Board reissue the RFP for Lot B down at Milton Landing. This was included in our last request for proposals, last fall. We did move forward with leases on both Lot C and for 25 Wharf. Right now, Lot B was at a lower dollar value than Lot C. Landing Committee felt there might be an opportunity to get a tenant in there onto Lot B, and to do so, we would need to reissue a request for proposals that would be open to anybody to submit a proposal for.
This would be
Mr.
for a
Wel-
water-dependent use. This would, that's the vote.
So boat storage.
No,
Or
boat use.
boat use.
Boat use.
Boat use.
Boat use.
But the Lot B would be for the storage, or?
No, this would be, well, they could potentially, if they wish to, ask to store their, whatever they have there in the winter, similar to what is in Lot C now.
Okay, okay. And Lot B right now, I'm sorry, I
Lot
didn't mean
B
to jump in.
is empty.
Is empty.
Well, it's not empty, but it's, we have no tenant.
And there are no boats there? Or,
There's a lot of junk there right now.
Correct. The yacht club has, that's land that the yacht club has stored boats on, obviously in recent history, and they have equipment there now. And right now, they're a tenant at will, really, on Lot B, until
But they're not paying any
otherwise.
money for it. Yeah, they're not paying that
I thought
much.
they paid, I thought they paid the amount
They
that was
paid
owed.
up till we signed the lease on what their past rent was.
Yep, we're still working on the rest of it.
Right, okay. I'm wondering, so I'll speak. I'm wondering if there are boats there for the winter. If there's the equipment there, would this require them to move it before the spring,
There
or
are
is
no
there any
boats
issues?
there now. They're boats in
No-
order, so
no
we will
boats.
be coming to you probably the next meeting, I think, by the next meeting, Nick, on Lot A?
Yeah,
We can
the
work
landing
it out.
committee has another meeting scheduled for the end of this week to talk about other options in terms of boat storage.
An option to use Lot A for seasonal boat storage in the winter. So we have a meeting on Thursday at 10 o'clock, Nick and I, with Paige and potentially town council to have kind of given an idea of what a policy might look like to bring to this board to vote on.
So the yacht club, other than equipment, there's nothing that they would have to move, or they'd have to move some,
They would have to move equipment.
Correct,
If
and
we
when
had
their
any-
boats come out of the water, typically they would store at Milton Landing. And
On
right
Lot B?
now,
But they're not,
correct.
they're not a tenant at Lot B. any
no, I
longer,
understand, I
right?
understand. I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm thinking about if the boats are coming out of the water, and then, I'm thinking about disrupting the yacht club, at the right time, right? Whether the right time is now, or
So
if it's in the
that's-
spring, or, that's the only question I have.
That's why we want to bring this Lot A proposal sooner versus later, because we're at the point now where they're going to want to take boats out. And this would be, if amenable to this board, would be a way for the town to allow yacht club owners with parameters of, your excise tax, the boat being insured. That's critical. That's, to store their boats on Lot A each winter between October 1st and June 15th. Which is similar to the time that was
Yeah.
in the old lease that ended in 2015.
Right. So timing-wise, if we issue this conceivably, and they have their boats on Lot B that they've taken out of the water, would we be displacing those at some point?
We should not
if
be
they-
allowing any boats to go on Lot B right now because no one's paying for it. It's an empty, open parcel of land.
Okay, but they're a tenant at will. They're just not paying.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
How are they a tenant at will on Lot B?
We haven't told them to vacate the premises. This board hasn't voted or taken any action in terms
But
of
if they're not
vacating.
paying, that's an issue.
No, right,
Yeah,
agreed, yes.
As a tenant at will, they have to be paying.
So they were a tenant at will when it was owned by, which is why we wrote the RFP, when it was owned by 88 Wharf. Now that we've taken ownership of it, that's why we broke in and issued an RFP, which they, as well as anyone else, could have bid on.
Right, no, I understand. I
They
remember
did
that.
not.
I remember that.
And to be honest with you, they could bid on this one too if they
Yeah,
want.
I understand. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to.
So it's basically
I usually don't ask questions
it's-
first, so.
It's
comments or
basically the
questions?
same RFP. There's no
Yep.
changes, other than date changes. There's no change to the RFP.
Comments or questions from members? Or motions?
I'll make a motion that we issue an RFP for Lot B for 44 Wharf.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay. Item 11, discussion approval of one-day liquor licenses.
So I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair, to approve a one-day liquor license on item A, the Milton Arts Center, 334 Edge Hill Road, First Friday, local musicians concerts, Friday, November 3rd, 2023, from 6 to 10. And then I'll make a second motion for the Arts Center, same location, art exhibit and music concert, Friday, December 1st, from 6 to 10.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Item 12, Town Administrator's Report. Mr. Milano.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, just a last-minute note and for employees, and as well as a thank you to the Select Board. We do have an appreciation luncheon tomorrow for staff. Thanks also to a bunch of partners, including Vance Welsh from Novara and Abbey Park, Dan Kerrigan from Still and Rye, some of our partners in our insurance companies who have provided different things to be given out tomorrow to staff. That's here at the Council on Aging from 11:30 to 1:30 for staff and elected officials. So appreciate your support. As you've probably noticed, Council on Aging parking lot is still wrapping up. We have a binder course down that should be paved by the end of this week. There's been a lot of parking issues in the town center over the past week and a half, so we appreciate everybody's patience as we work through this project. It's always tough to take a big parking lot offline. Townwide flu clinic is scheduled for tomorrow, the 11th, and Thursday, the 12th, here from 4 to 6 p.m. So if you haven't gotten your flu shot, you can sign up online. All the information is available on the town website regarding that. We are doing one for staff next week as well in Town Hall. HR Director Paige Appolito has given me her notice. She's moving on to another community at the end of this month. She's been here for, I want to say, 8 years. So appreciate her service to the town. We'll be working closely with her to transition over the next couple of weeks. And we have posted the position online for anybody who has interest in human resources position or experience. Feel free to reach out. Municipal experience, certainly not a requirement at all. Happy to talk to anybody with interest in that. And that's it for my updates, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Milano. The only item I have on the chair's report is to be on the lookout for the timing and information for the community event to be held at the congregation of Beth Shalom of the Blue Hills this Friday. That information will be forthcoming, and we'll try to publish that information as well, so as many people can be aware.
7:45 p.m., I think.
Oh, we do know. It's 7:45.
Well, I think that's what he said in his remarks.
Oh,
Yeah.
I missed that. 7:45 p.m.?
Yeah.
All right, so
At the
7:45
temple.
p.m. at the temple.
I think too, Mr. Chair, you may recall, we were there last time? Remember? I think the first aspect of it is just for the congregation, and then they open the doors to the public.
That's correct.
Yeah.
The rabbi said there would be the
Private
standard
first.
Shabbat service for the congregation, and then open to the community at 7:45.
So maybe we'll just coordinate with the rabbi to put
Certainly.
out the word as he wants it.
We did something similar. It was after the synagogue shooting in
That's right.
Pittsburgh, so we are very similar. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
I have one thing.
Oh, Ms. Mustang.
Thank you. Mr. Milano, one question I have is when they do the striping for the spaces, I get a lot of feedback from people saying that the spaces that we have out here, the newer ones by the fire station, are extremely tight. I've gotten a lot of feedback. People are not happy about that. And I think for some of our older residents especially, we need a little bit more room. And for anybody, I would like to have, it's tight on those spots.
The town hall, that was done intentionally to be as small as they could, to have as many lot spaces as they could until the new lot for the firefighters opens, which will take both
Okay.
cars and trucks out of there.
So they'll reline
and allow
them?
it to review whether we should consider looking at that at the same time.
Okay.
It
So I did get a
is-
lot of complaints about
But for
that.
the
so-
COA,
The COA will be lined as it has
Properly.
always been, which is in how we typically would do it.
Okay,
The
just wanted to
town
make
hall
sure
is
of
a
that.
conscious decision to make it narrower than usual at
Okay,
the time.
thank you.
all right.
I was here today, I think by Friday, right? They're doing this by Friday?
Yeah.
All right, item 15, future meeting dates. We have the 24th and the 14th
November.
of November, which
Yeah.
seems to be 3 weeks. I don't know, is that 3 weeks?
It's the first day of November is a Wednesday, so it's about as
the
long
way
as
it
you can
falls
go
on the
between.
calendar.
The way they're calling the fall.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. All right.
Sorry, take a break.
All right. Take a
go
break.
trick or treating.
Take a break. Item 16, future agenda items. Anyone can email me if they want, or they can say them, they can.
I would like
Mr.
to
Wel-
bring up,
Mr. Zoll.
I know Mr. Milano had mentioned previously that looking into ways for folks to get in touch with their town meeting members by email, and I know that there's been some discussion on that, so I would appreciate having that as an update.
Yeah, I think
Isn't that the town
would be
clerk's call? Isn't that kind of her?
Well, we can get an update on
I
it.
know he's been talking with Sue and with others.
correct.
So maybe we can, maybe on the 24th, we can ask the town clerk to come in and give us
Sure.
an update on that. Okay. Anything else? And obviously, just send me an email if there's anything that you want on the agenda. Item 17 is executive session. So I will move to enter into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, Milton Professional Management Association and Milton Firefighters Local 1116, based on my belief that discussion of this matter in open session may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the Select Board. The Select Board will not return to open session.
Mr. Wells seconded.
Oh, second, all right. Motion's been made and second. This is a roll call vote, I believe, for executive session. All those in favor, Mr. Zoll?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
And Mr. Zulish, yes. And so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. We will see you again on October 24th. Have a nice week and a nice weekend. Thank you.